Financial Issues. Welcome back. I'm Dan Celia. It's great to be here. 888-589-8840 if you want to queue your call up. Get it in the queue. Not sure when we're going to get to calls. As you can imagine, I got a lot of things I want to talk about, primarily due not to only the inauguration speech. Certainly want to talk about that, and I'm going to. But I want to talk about the economics of it. As a matter of fact, at some point in the broadcast, I'm going to make a prediction. I went through as much. I didn't have a lot of time this morning because I had to do some stock analytical kind of work, and I didn't have time to get to everything. But I did go through as many commentaries as I could find. Now, I've got to say, I didn't read them word for word. I skimmed them, scanned through as many commentaries as I could find on the speech. I did not find not one person that is going to point out to you something. You know how I always find something. And I want to point out to you something in this speech that I believe is a setup for something that is about to come. Now, I am about 98% sure that I'm right about this. And I think you'll agree with me when you hear what the president said and you hear my take on it. I almost said my spin on it. It's not spin. When you hear my take on it. And it ties into something that I've said many times before. And I really, in reference to a particular piece of legislation. I don't want you to miss that. I'm going to get to it probably at the top of the hour, coming out of the news break into our second hour. I'll probably springboard off of that. Maybe I'll get to it sooner. But nevertheless, I want you to hear this. You're not going to hear it anywhere else. Also, I have left up on my website the interview that I had yesterday with Betsy McCoy because I got an enormous amount of email. I got email from people that I don't know that were talking about forwarding it to all their friends. It is unbelievable when you hear about Obamacare. You're not going to like it. It's going to be disturbing. It's going to be you're going to feel a great deal of concern. She's not talking about what might happen. She's talking about exactly what is in the plan. And it is, I'm going to get her back. We're going to do something with her to really break this down for you. But the book is called Beating Obamacare, and I have never 2 days promoted anybody's book like this. As a matter of fact, I don't even promote my own books this good. I wish I did. But Beating Obamacare is a book that you have to own and you have to read. If you haven't read a book in 20 years, you need to read this book. It's an easy read. It's not big. It's not thick. It's not a textbook. It's going to break it down for you. It's something you got to read. But if nothing else, go to my website, financialissues.org, and you'll see the first video right on the left-hand side of the screen on my homepage. You'll see an interview with Betsy McCoy. It's what we did yesterday on the interview, and just listen to it. It's a long interview. It's 24 minutes long, but it's worth listening to, so make sure you do that. Of course, you can download our podcast of any program here on Financial Issues at afr.net or on iTunes or whatever. If you go to iTunes, search Financial Issues, you'll find all the podcasts of the programs. So you can do that too. It's in the first hour of the program. So make sure you do that. So basically, the speech yesterday, by the way, all the major indices are kind of flat right now, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Let me just give you my opening comments about this speech so that I can get on with the rest of the program. It is very obvious that President Obama wants and is looking for, and in fact is probably going to get more government. That's what he wants. He used phrases. I'm not playing much of the speech, a couple minutes, but he used phrases throughout the speech, things like collective action, things like together, the things like we will or we must. When you hear those things, who is this collective body? Who are those that are together? Who is exactly the we that he's referring to? It's the government, folks. And there is no doubt about it. This is a president that is going to be a little bit more ambitious than he was in the first term, of seeing bigger and more federal government. That's what this was about. Do not be surprised when we see that. He talked very briefly. I thought it was appalling that he didn't talk about some of the problems facing America and lay out a plan for it. He talked about the size of our deficit, period. Didn't give any real solutions. Because in the next breath, he said, we are going to continue to defend the very programs that are creating the size of the deficit. He says, yes, we are going to defend that he is unwilling to cut things to Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security, which I find ironic that he said that right after I had the meeting or the interview yesterday on beating Obamacare with Betsy McCoy. When in that plan, the very thing that the president is doing is destroying our healthcare system for seniors in particular, yet he is holding himself out as a defender of those programs. What we heard yesterday was an endorsement, was a confirmation that his liberal, radical, Marxist views, in my opinion, are going to be achieved. This was not a speech. Well, actually, it was a speech of unity. It was a speech, as we would hope that an inauguration speech would be, is a speech about unity. Well, this was that. And he succeeded in getting the point across and uniting the far left with the left. That's the unity that came out of this speech. Make no mistake about it. He talked about the Democratic coalition. He talked about gays and minorities, feminists, the poor, the immigrants. And he talked about the way that healing is going to happen is through an ideological commitment to a liberal agenda. That is what's going to deliver this country and keep us strong, in his opinion. There was no talk about a president that is eager to make America stronger and compromise in areas that make sense. There was no talk of that whatsoever, and I found that very disappointing. Why? Because he doesn't need to. He controls and really has, total control of the government. Look, it takes 2/3 of the government to do anything. There's 3 basic branches that he controls, and I would submit that he probably controls a 4th of government. That would be the judicial branch. But nevertheless, he is the executive branch. The Senate he controls, and the House of Representatives he doesn't. But he controls the Senate and the executive branch. That's 2/3. He doesn't need a whole lot more to accomplish his agenda unless Senate Democrats come to their senses. To say I was disappointed in the speech is probably the understatement of the world and the understatement of the year for me. And again, it was a uniting speech, uniting the far left to the left. That's what it was about. He has a clip. There's a clip here. It's number 1, Adam, that talks about the modern economy and the free markets. Listen to this.
We, the people, still believe that our obligations as Americans are not just to ourselves, but to all posterity. We will respond to the threat of climate change, knowing that the failure to do so would betray our children and future generations.
Okay, let's go to clip 1, Adam.
Together, we determine that a modern economy requires railroads and highways to speed travel and commerce, schools and colleges to train our workers. Together, we discovered that a free market only thrives when there are rules to ensure competition and fair play.
So here's the problem. The modern economy that he's referring to, is the very thing that he wants to expand government to accomplish. He's not talking about, he doesn't want the private sector to accomplish those things. He talks about a free market, but it's the government, it's we being the government that are going to make those things happen. There is this underlying point that he says, I understand about that. But then he goes on in the speech to talk about what we've got to do collectively. It's about expanding the size of government. It's about growing the size of the government in order to support the economy and grow the economy as his ideology suggests that we need to grow the economy. My question is, as the government is attempting to grow the economy in those ways, who is going to pay for it? It's got to be on the backs of you and I. The reality of tax increases is beginning to set in to so many Americans. Phil Mickelson, many of you might not know him, one of the best golfers in the world, is saying, I might not have any choice but to leave my home state of California as I am being taxed at 62% of my income. I've got to rethink whether I want to continue to tour or retire. I've got to continue to think. As a matter of fact, he just turned down ownership in a professional sports team because of the tax situation. It's beginning to set in all across America, the reality of the taxes. We're going to see, this is just the beginning of professional athletes that are realizing I've got a $23 million contract to pitch a baseball, and I'm going to be giving away 12, probably more than that, depending upon which state they reside in. I'm going to be giving away 12 to 14 million of that in taxes. Think about it. It's beginning to set in that the ideology of this administration, of the far left and the left, can only be accomplished on the backs of middle-class America, not the rich. The backs of the rich aren't big enough to carry this kind of load.